There are many times, there are many times I hear the voice, a voice of freedom calling me. Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of your favorite podcast in the whole world, the Politics of Kendra podcast. My name is Kendra Mickey from Kendra and the Bunnies Music. Today we have an awesome guest on the show. We have Craig S. Hyman. He is a business owner of the Numinous Music Presents and Productions. That's his primary business. He's also an artist manager and a music industry consultant. Additionally, he curates and programs live music concerts. And if you know me, you know how much I love live music. Thank you so much for being here, Craig.
It's my pleasure. I love your podcast. So I'm really psyched to now be a subject of it.
Excellent. Well, okay, so how do you say, did I say that right? Numinous?
It's a Numinous Music Presents and Productions. So it's an umbrella company that does everything in the music industry, including a lot for TV, film, and large-scale events for music. And primarily, I function in artist management capacity, a concert presenter, live music programmer, curator, and music industry consultant. Because I've also worked a lot on the label side and abroad, which I'll talk about when we dig into the questions. But.
Excellent. So we've got some awesome questions for you. Let's start with the question of who are you?
Yeah, who am I? Well, I guess I would start out by saying I'm a bit of a Renaissance man in that I've always had many passions in life and can and have worn many hats, whether it be in the music industry, in TV and film industry, large-scale events. Like when Obama was elected, I was hired by the Hawaii State Society for the inaugural ball. I do a lot of cause-related stuff. In particular, I'm an adoption life coach and educator, creator of an 8-hour expressive arts adoption healing seminar, which I facilitate and have done all around the U.S. So I use the word Renaissance man because I have so many passions and interests. I have an extreme passion for art, film, travel, more. I should also say that I live in LA now for 7 years. I'm a diehard New Yorker through and through, born and raised there, which makes up a lot of who I really am. And I'm one of those people that feel the universe revolves around New York City because it does.
Yeah.
A little pompous, bias, but I work in New York a lot still, although I reside in LA. I would also say that, answering your question in a long-winded manner, of who I am, I like to think of myself as a community a builder, locally, building community locally, nationally, globally. I like to create community through a lifelong desire and commitment to travel, having been bitten by the wanderlust bug at a very young age. And I have an extreme passion for connecting people to other people everywhere, or to myself in all aspects of my life, whether it be work or play, be the arts, film, other cultures, outdoor activities like backcountry hiking, all that stuff. So that might be a little long for your audience. I hope I didn't lose them already.
Oh no, they're here to stay. The bunny family, we roll tough with lots of bunnies. That's excellent. That's so great that you helped curate the Obama inauguration. That's a huge deal and really awesome.
That was a real joy. I have a long history in Hawaii. The past 15 years, I've been there like 11 times for 4 to 6 weeks, and I've managed a number of artists there. I've worked with a couple organizations there. So when I got the call by the Hawaii State Society to curate the music portion of the inaugural ball, which was 12 artists from Hawaii on 3 stages, 3 floors at the Mandarin Hotel in D.C., I was just ecstatic. I was able to bring back together artists that are no longer playing together in Hawaii because they're retired and reunite them for this grand occasion because Obama grew up on Oahu.
Mm-hmm.
His nickname, by the way, back then was Barry. So everybody on the Hawaii State Society and then some knew him from like high school and whatnot. So that led into me putting together a deal with Kona Brewing Company to be the sponsor of the ball. And because of my technical background in stage and TV film, I helped them with the lighting job and press liaison. So I just became like chief cook and bottle washer. And it was a real thrill.
That's so great. So cool to be involved in politics, music and politics. They really do intertwine so much. I know the first time we spoke, we talked about our mutual love for the Grateful Dead, and there's so much impact on like social change and the feeling of social times and climates that is intertwined with music and politics.
Right. True.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a long history with that.
I love it. Absolutely. So your backstory, where are you from and what got you into music?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in and around New York City. So I was born in Queens. I was raised in a New York City suburb in New Jersey, just across the river. I lived in Manhattan and Brooklyn pretty much my entire adult life, save 5 years in Northern California from 1992 to 97. I lived in Marin County, which is where I actually got to work with Jerry Garcia on his last video, and had some dead experiences.
Yeah.
Actually lived down the block from Bob Weir for a while, and so now I'm in LA for 7 years. Let's see what got me into music. That's a long story, but I'll try to condense it.
Okay.
For our viewing audience. Basically, for starters, music was my first passion in life, and I've never connected with anything so deeply as music since my first experience and exposure to it, and right up until this moment, while we speak, and throughout my entire life. I remember consciously, now subconsciously, I may have connected to music earlier on, but I was like 4 or 5 years old, living in Bayonne, New Jersey, playing stickball with some of the older kids. And I remember we went to his house, this one guy, Stewie Metric, and he put on a 45 of a song called I Got Rhythm by a group called The Happenings back then. It was before that was even done by like, I think a big band or something. And I just kept making him play it until he got so fed up with me and said, just take it home, man. And just like, leave, and give it back to me in 4 days. And I played it over and over and over until my mother couldn't take it anymore.
Oh my gosh.
It was so important to me that I honored this is my first record. It wasn't even mine, that I returned it on time so I could get more. And that was kind of how it all really started. On top of it, well, we can talk about this a little more later, but in my you may have mentioned I'm a reunited adoptee, like 32 years now, and it turns out that everybody on my biological mother's side of the family, including my biological mother, she was a singer and songwriter. My grandmother was a jazz singer, owned a club in Brooklyn. My cousin's a composer. Everybody was in music, so it's in my blood. But I'll go on later to tell you why I'm not a player performer,
okay,
as opposed to what I am, which is working in the biz. Yeah,
that's so wonderful. I love New York City. I spent some time in Brooklyn in 2019, played some shows, recorded at a boutique record label out there, and I love the energy and love the artsy vibe out there. What do you think about LA compared to New York City? Do you like LA?
That's a conversation that comes up so often, and it's not a short one. So I've spent many years coming out to LA for pleasure and for work. So I kind of knew it well. And also when I lived in the Bay Area, I would come here a lot for work and friends. So I kind of had a relationship with it already. but I love New York, and it'll always be my home.
Hmm.
But I just got so tired of mostly the weather, and
Yeah.
sometimes it could be exhausting. But so I really moved out here because I can stand the weather, and I needed to be around the industry.
Hmm.
It was kind of either here or Nashville, and I love Nashville, but I have more roots here, and I have more relationships in the business and
Hmm.
friendships here. So I do like LA. I like LA a lot. Traffic's a drag, but the
Hmm.
rest is fine.
Yeah.
Uh, but New York will probably always be my home. So
Always where the heart is. Yeah.
yeah, you know.
Very cool. And tell me your favorite genres or genres that outline your music taste.
Well, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I'm a major music junkie. I mean, that's a bit like asking the Pope, what passage in the Bible is the best one or his favorite. Um, Basically, just about every type um, of genre of music speaks to me in one way or another.
Hmm.
Actually, can't think of any that don't, at least on some level. If I had to pick like a favorite genre or a couple of them, I guess it would go something like this. I would say probably like the blues. I'm a huge
Definitely.
fan of all or any blues artists, which pretty much all of them, unfortunately, are no longer alive,
Hmm.
save maybe one or two. But
Hmm.
my favorite blues artist is Skip James, and my favorite blues song is a Skip James song called Cypress Grove Blues, which to me, if you listen to it, it's sort of the epitome of the blues. It's very haunting. It sounds like it's got a lot of history in it and a lot of pain and a lot of depth. Um, I was also lucky enough to work with one of my other favorite blues artists, John Lee Hooker, before he died, and I got to visit him in his home in the Bay Area. That meant a lot to me.
Hmm.
I'm also really into African music, like
Wow.
all of it, especially from Mali, Senegal, Zaire. I'd probably have to say that Ali Farka Touré is my favorite African artist. May he rest in peace. I think it's also safe to say that I'm a huge lover of all types of world music from any region, country, culture globally. My insatiable appetite to hear, learn, and experience any and all familiar or new music from around the globe will probably never be completely satisfied. But I think most important to say is I'm a rock and roller at heart.
Hmm.
I was very fortunate to grow up in New York City where all types of music were available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So I was able to start to see concerts at age 12, by myself, growing up there. Every artist toured through there, or many
Hmm.
lived there. So I would be going to I've gone to thousands of concerts in Madison Square Garden,
Nice.
and then the mid-sized shows like Beacon Theater and the Palladium. And my earliest, you want to hear my earliest first concert?
Yes, absolutely.
This is going to really date myself, but
Okay.
my first concert was Alice Cooper in
Yes.
1973, June 1973, and the ticket, I still have the stub somewhere. It was like $4.50
Wow.
for the ticket, and it was the Billion Dollar Babies tour, so it was very theatrical. And he had as an opening act Flo and Eddie, and Flo and Eddie were the two main guys from the Turtles, Mark Volman, Howard Kalin, who sang backup vocals for like T-Rex and Frank Zappa and the Mothers and Eddie and
Hmm.
the Mothers. It was an amazing show. And then right after that, I saw Led Zeppelin
Yes.
in one of the three shows that were filmed for the feature film they made. The song remains the
Hmm.
same. And then I would say, all those next few years, it was the Who, the Stones, the Dead.
Yeah.
I've seen the Dead 187 times now.
Wow.
Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, Jethro Tull, Humble Pie, The Faces, Deep Purple. These are some of my favorite rock artists, and even to this day, they still are. And I would say also Tom Waits,
Hmm.
Laura Nyro, Carole King, Joni Mitchell, Elton John. I was actually lucky enough to see John Lennon's last ever live performance, which he came out and played 4 songs at an Elton John concert, Thanksgiving night, 1974, Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really beyond words. For me, my favorite era of rock and roll is in the U.S. is anything that took place from 1966 to 1974.
Okay.
That I think that period was the best and the most vibrant or significant in terms of.
Yeah, but rock and rollers were trying something new. They were just completely going towards songwriting with freedom, and then there was that feeling where things were just clicking as they were happening and being created. And correct me if I'm wrong, but then the 70s was kind of that gel into, like, the late 60s was a setup for that cool rock and roll scene, and then the 70s was the scene, a lot of it.
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, to take it even further is so there was so much happened in such a short period of time in that window, that 8-year window that I just described.
Mm-hmm.
So, and starting with the late 60s, I mean, the world was on fire politically, culturally. Yeah. The music coming out of the East Coast and especially the West Coast, psychedelia, all rooted in like blues and stuff and then what was coming over from England,
mm-hmm.
It was just so much that it just gave birth to so much more in such a short period of time, and then it sort of morphed and then expanded into what happened in the early 70s when a lot of that was changing or getting left behind and was giving birth to bands like who were starting to peak were like the Who and the Dead and
mm-hmm.
A lot of English bands, Rolling Stones and Humble Pie and stuff. So yeah.
So cool. Really, really rad. Led Zeppelin is a big influence for me. Love them. I love a bunch of artists that you mentioned. Alice Cooper, I got the chance to meet him in 2018 at a sobriety event, actually. That was super cool.
I love Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
One of my all-time favorites.
That's awesome. What was the venue you saw him at?
It was in Madison Square Garden.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that venue.
Yeah. That's my home away from home.
That's so great. I've stayed at the Hotel Pennsylvania right there on 34th.
Right across the street.
And then walked over to see Phish for New Year's Eve 2017, and then also for the Baker's Dozen for a couple.
Yeah, I was at a couple of those Phish shows, New Year's Eve, and I've been in many parties in that hotel, and I think I've crashed there a couple of times myself.
Yeah. Wow. Why did you get into music?
Well, the joke I like to respond with is that I wasn't paying attention. Not that funny.
It's kind of funny. Life happens when we're making plans.
Yeah, and also like wasn't paying attention, so oops, it just kind of crept up on me.
Mm-hmm.
But why did I get? Well, I didn't play music when I was younger, when I was a kid, but I needed it like oxygen ever since early childhood. I think I was 4 or 5 when I told that story that the kid lent me the record, and then I took my parents' record player and put it in my bedroom, and I refused to let them have it back.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I just couldn't be apart from it. So I started collecting records at 5. I tried, playing guitar. I tried playing drums. I think I played in the school band for 10 minutes, and I didn't have the patience to sit still to practice. So, knowing that I had to be around music, I had to be close to it. I love to talk about it all the time, as much as possible. And I'm really good at making things happen. If you give me a phone and a computer, and back then a fax, I could just, I can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I went into the business side of it really early on in life, and I've worn just about every hat in it, and I'm naturally good at it, and just drawn to it like a magnet. It's like I said, it's like oxygen for me. Mm-hmm. So even like when I go on, I think a lot of people do this, or music addicts like us.
Yeah.
When I go on road trips or vacations or traveling or whatever, or even for an occasion. I select different music that will be fitting for that trip or that destination or that particular holiday, and and I curate the experience, but the musical thread's going to be.
Yeah.
Also, most of what I read is about music and musical artists, and I also read a lot of spirituality and psychology stuff where the two cross paths. But yeah, I was and am turned on so much by music, every aspect of music, live music, presenting it, or the industry, the creative process of artists writing and recording it. And it was kind of like not even something to think about. I just went towards it and moved into it. Is that a real answer? I don't.
That's an awesome answer. I love that you said it just kind of happened, because that's how I feel about music too. I've been acting forever, and I moved out to LA to go to school, but also to act. And then I just was like, all of a sudden, the world was like, do this, play the guitar, sing, write. And it just felt like all of a sudden I was a musician, and it felt like, I was planning for one thing, and then music happened, and it's everything. I mean, I was going to concerts so much and singing and playing so much that it just made sense. So I resonated with what you said about music kind of just happening, and like different things just happening. All of a sudden people are reaching out to me to write music reviews and work on PR for festivals and stuff like that. And it just kind of all falls into place. And that's how I feel about music. I'll be at a show, for an example, I'll be at a show, the rock and roller on the stage, the guitarist hits a note, and I have the perfect thought at that moment, and someone leans over to me and says something really witty, and it's just like, this is so perfect. It's so perfect. And everything's on time and in tone.
Like
and
the whole
on key.
life, the whole world is in sync, in the state of flow in that instance, right?
Yeah. And to take that flow, sometimes I think about how big concerts are almost like a reset button for me. Like when I went to go see Dead and Company at the Forum in Christmas of last year, I just felt like this is all of our family, all of our groups getting together, and we all collectively press reset, and then we go on our ways, and then we come back, and then we reset and go on our ways. It's definitely a part of life.
Yeah. I mean, that reminds me of when I was in college, and I also just used to see a lot of Dead shows because they were just so much living around New York, and then used to tour them a lot. And then when I moved to the Bay Area, they toured like 4 to 6 times a year, and they had like 4 or 5 show stints, so it was very easy to see them a lot. But I remember my early touring days very fondly. I mean, it's just this sense of family and community and magic, and the music and the people and I walked in, if I didn't have a ticket, I walked to any show, which was rarely the case, and I knew 200 people immediately, and there was always a ticket for me, or a hotel room, or I had a hotel room for someone else. So I'm very big on community, and I try to continue that thread throughout my life. And I'm really happy to say that some of those people I'm still friends with, but I also have community that I've created through music and just through life, traveling, all abroad, Europe, Iceland, Hawaii, everywhere. But I miss those days. I really do.
Yeah. It's so special walking onto Shakedown Street and just seeing everyone, and it's like, wait, I know like all these people practically.
Yeah.
And if I don't know them personally, I feel like I know them on a different level.
Yeah.
Our next question is, what events led to where you are now? And if you want to give us a little bit of a timeline of your time in the music industry.
Okay, this won't be short.
Okay.
Let's see. Again, another tough. You're throwing me these curveballs. These are they're not such black and white answers. So, well, I guess I'll start sort of an easier way first, like listing a lot of the jobs and sort of capacities I've worked in, or hats that I have worn, and then I'll tell you some of the highlights from these. I'm a artist manager and music curator. We mentioned earlier, concert presenter. I was a radio disc jockey.
Mm-hmm.
I am a music industry consultant. I did A&R for major record label. I created a reissue label, High Moon Records, from scratch, where we released amazing gems of recordings that were no longer available to the public. Been a tour manager, a stage manager, a film producer, a large-scale events producer, an A&R scout, a music programmer. I've done PR. I pretty much have done everything except publishing, and I've dealt with publishing where it pertains to artists that I manage,
Mm-hmm.
so music placement, things like that, and record deals, publishing deals rather. I would say some of the highlights is, well, first, I guess like any respectable manager, I have to get a plug in. So what I'm fairly newly managing an artist named My Baby from the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and they are like a roots-driven, sort of blues-oriented, blues-rooted, sort of hypno dance band. So the music, while it's kind of like a blues Janis Joplin-ish, it's kind of met with an organic EDM. EDM is the third largest export from the Netherlands. EDM music. So it's kind of, they don't use just pedals and guitars. There's no loops, no machinery.
Oh,
and
nice.
Their performances are really vibrant. I mean, they're just, they headline at Glastonbury and all these places. So when they come through, as soon as the pandemic lifts, I have them scheduled for this summer. I moved last summer and fall's tour in the U.S. and Canada to this coming. So if they're around, and we have some Southern California shows, I'll have you come out and check them out.
Very cool.
But that's just too long-winded a plug. So I have my own company, Numinous Music Presents and Productions, and that's allowed me to do so many things and so many projects simultaneously. I've managed the A&R department at RCA Records in New York City, out of New York, for the New York and LA offices. At the time, it was kind of like, Dave Matthews probably still is the biggest artist they had. We had just won a Grammy with Christina Aguilera and ZZ Top on the label, Bruce Hornsby.
Mm-hmm.
I created the High Moon Records label from scratch. My first world tour. These are highlights, things that I really are passionate about and I really remember with great fondness. My first world tour I did with an artist named Ryuichi Sakamoto from Japan. It was 1996, and Ryuichi Sakamoto, he won an Oscar for the soundtrack to The Last Emperor with David Byrne.
Nice.
He also stars in and did the soundtrack for a movie with David Bowie called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. But he's like almost like Elvis in Japan. He's started out in a band called Yellow Magic Orchestra in the 80s, which I used to play on college radio.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very successful artist since then. I loved my college years as a DJ at WKNJ in New Jersey, and then I was a concert promoter. Is how I got started in live concerts as a stagehand, and then I was a concert promoter.
Mm-hmm.
Fairleigh Dickinson University. I've been on the board of directors for the Music Managers Forum, the U.S. chapter in New York, which was originally founded by Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin's manager, and Pink Floyd's manager, and Peter Gabriel's manager. And then I was on the board of directors for the Center for World Music out of San Diego a couple of years. I did this music series not too long ago for Hosteling International, and they have a very large property in New York on the Upper West Side, and they have hot properties all over the country, and then another property in Santa Monica.
Mm-hmm.
So me and my business partner in that project, we put on concert series of all different genres of music: world, rock, jazz, lounge, and these would be free shows in venues anywhere from that would hold like 50 people to 500 seat ballrooms.
Mm-hmm.
For the general public and people who were guests of the hostel. This is like really high-end hosteling.
Okay.
I'd mentioned earlier about the inaugural ball for Obama.
Yeah.
I was on staff at Showtime as a TV producer for a few years, and one of my favorite things is I did a big branding campaign for them. I guess I can add marketing into my hats that I wear. And one of the thrills was I did this huge shoot in Iceland, and some of it were on top of the glaciers and outside of helicopters, and it was pretty wild. Apparently, the crew I hired there had told me that I was the second or only American producer to have filmed there, but that stands out as something really exciting. I also produced some tour commercials for the Red Hot Chili Peppers years ago when they were doing a European tour. I was also a college professor for 2 semesters.
Really?
Adjunct professor, Jersey City State College, intro to broadcasting. And then I worked for Santana for about 3 years.
Cool.
Freelance. So any video he needed produced or any shows he wanted to produce, or I had a creative video. He got a Lifetime Achievement Award given to him by the being a true humanitarian by the Naris Foundation. So I had put together something that they showed at the Hollywood Ball, which was fortunately came out well. That would have been embarrassing. And I think the last thing I want to mention was back in the 80s. So me and a couple of the guys who were sort of founding MTV programmers, execs, and another director of photography that I knew in New York, we created this TV show kind of based on the A&R principle of record labels. So it's called Music Scene. And we had all this interest from like Fox and other people, but it never got picked up. So we did a pilot. Let's see, we did it at the Paradise in Boston. One of the bands was managed by Tony Bennett's son. I'm trying to remember the name. And anyway, what it was I went to all these major markets in the US, like 24, and I picked what were the 3 most popular sort of unsigned bands. And we did interviews with them, and then we shot the live show, and then we were able to get 3 bands into one episode. And we were the first to do anything like that. Since then, there's been a million TV shows with the same format or variation of that theme. But, that was one that I really, really dug, and I had high hopes for it.
Yeah.
It didn't come through. It connected me with a lot of people in the U.S. that lasted forever, but that was close to my heart. So,
what was the name of that show?
Called Music Scene, SCENE.
Awesome. That was on MTV.
Well, it was with 2 of the main guys from MTV, and 1 director of photography outside of MTV, and we came together because of our backgrounds and how we complemented each other and our passion for uncovering and presenting to the world great artists that have yet to be exposed on a larger scale. And we thought it was a great idea, and it was, because so many people use that general principle format for years to come. But we just did the pilot, and it didn't go anywhere for us.
Right. Is there any show like that today besides like America's Got Talent and The Voice? By the time people get onto those stages, they're pretty much so vetted. Is there anything for unsigned artists or anything in your perspective on a big mainstream type of scale?
If there is now, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
But there were many come the 90s and like in 2000, especially the 90s.
Yeah.
And then what happened was, Austin City Limits has always been there. That's been around forever.
Definitely. I grew up in Texas, so that's pretty cool.
So so that's a great show. Not exactly the same as what I just described, but my point being that there were a lot of shows after the sort of 80s and 90s and early 2000s that were not really bringing cutting edge new artists, but they were bringing established or indie artists that the world was kind of hip to or just getting hip to,
Yeah.
and putting them, like, there's the Artist Den, and there's that place, it's in Kentucky or Georgia, where it's a cave, and they put these artists, they perform in a cave, and they have a lighting rig, and there's an
Wow.
audience of like 300-400 people in this cave. It might even still be on the air, but these are bands that are like really, well, not super famous, but established, like got careers, so everybody knows them if you follow that genre. If you sort of hip to that band or a similar band. So to answer your question, there may be something now that exists like that. God knows there's so much media out there.
Yeah.
But there was a lot more of it. Like, I'm pretty sure we were the first to do it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be talking about it. But yeah, that's sort of, I guess they realized there was more money with artists that were.
Right. It does have to do with the money and the how many people are going to watch. But the cool thing with the internet is that there's access to all these indie musicians and indie artists right here on the internet. And there's people like NPR, that's a really big established radio station, who showcases indie artists, once a year at least, on their Tiny Desk concert contest.
Right. I love NPR, and I'm a big fan of, I listen to it every day, actually. And I'm a big fan of Tiny Desk.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of artists on there and close to getting on there, and artists that I've worked with who eventually have made it on there. So yeah, that's the sort of similar principle. I like the whole idea of the setting that they put them in, the physical setting.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular story or lesson or something that you'd like to share with the audience?
So well, I guess this is kind of like maybe general knowledge, but I guess I'm speaking to artists or developing artists, because there used to be this thing in the industry called artist development, which is something else I did, which was really passion, and there isn't, as you know, much of that anymore. Certainly not on the label side is concerned. The one thing I will say is that nobody has all the answers and nobody knows everything. Although a lot of people will like to tell you that they are, and they do.
Yeah.
And one thing I think I would say to developing artists is always consider the source. In other words, the person you're talking to, for the answers they're giving you for anything, for that matter, anything. And meaning, I would say, like, seek out multiple sources, seek out information and multiple opinions and inputs, whether it be talking about what you should do with your career or about your music or just about anything within the industry or being an artist and following your passion. And, inputs from like those you respect or those who have been there, in regards to what you're trying to sort of suss out, like figure out yourself, about how things work in the industry. And don't let the status and the stature of those who have already had success be sort of the end all tell all. Like, a lot of people, like, I remember when I was younger in college, and I used to put my professors like on a pedestal because they had these incredible backgrounds and lives. And I later figured out, after college, 5 or 10 years later, that while they were wonderful, they didn't know everything and they didn't get everything right. I learned by getting my hands dirty out there in the world, in the industry, that some of what they were telling me was not accurate, and some of what I figured out was a better plan. But I would say always collect as much information as you can, consider the source, conclude with what makes the most sense, and most importantly, just listen to your gut. Be your own instincts are your greatest compass, I always say. Be honest with how your body feels and what it's telling you, and when you're digesting or reflecting certain information or situations, and if it doesn't feel right or good, then something is wrong. And is wrong with what you're thinking, feeling, and yeah. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense.
Is that at all what you wanted me to answer?
That's awesome. And then on top of that, I'd say sometimes we work with individuals, and so this is like on a music consulting or a music mentor basis, so you're paying that person for their services. Sometimes you can work with someone and then you accomplish a certain goal and then you start to plan for your next chapter, and then you're like, well, do I need to bring this person along to the next chapter? It just depends on how things go. And sometimes as artists, we have to not only listen to our gut feeling, but say, okay, this person was perfect for where I was then. Should I bring them along for the next phase, or should I hold on to them as a contact and stuff like that? I like what you said about listening to our bodies, because energetically there's so much stuff that comes about when artists are putting themselves out there. They're not only dealing with the attention and the reflection and the thoughts they get from the people, they're also dealing with all the inner stuff that's coming to them, because the universe is then like, oh my gosh, look, this artist is going to channel all these songs. Here's this emotion. Here's this experience. Here's that story. And sometimes as artists, it's like, whoa, there's so much being given and so much being thrown at me, so we can pick and choose and we can sift and sort what is the right experience for us. And then if you ever go through an experience and you're like, dang it, I can't believe that just happened, just write a song about it. And then you can sleep at night and go, well, that's the reason that it happened. So I could write that song about it. And you know what? I love that song.
I totally, that is a great way to conclude that statement, because as artists, you guys are so fortunate that no matter what happens, you can always turn to, even if it's a horrible life experience, or a breakup, whatever it is, you can always turn to, I can write a song about that. Or this is like, this is material for something creative.
Even like a music video, sometimes I'll go through something and I'm like, okay, this is the perfect way to explain what I'm trying to get at visually in the music video.
Yeah.
Our next question is, what is your reason, mission, or calling? What keeps you going and gets you up in the morning?
I would say passion, this burning desire to turn people on, in the biggest way, via music, as the conduit, whether it be recorded music or, more importantly to me, particular live music, live experience. So I guess my goal and greatest reward is blowing people's minds with incredible live music that they've never heard of, or at least ever experienced in a live performance setting before. I'd say second to that would be turning somebody on to a recording that they've never heard before that completely blows them away. That's what keeps me going. I've been doing that sort of thing, like making mixed compilation tapes for people as early as 12 years old, I think. And this is kind of an extension of that somehow. I mean, and the fact that I can't keep away from music nor live without it also kind of keeps me going. I mean, I think my calling in life is to be a person that that does all of the above, all those things I just mentioned, that brings these things to people in the general public, preferably in a highly creative live setting. Experience. I want to create experiences. Experiential is the word is very important to me. To be the one to discover, nurture, and present these musical genres, artists to the world. And I think what else keeps me going is the sense of community and camaraderie amongst people over time that I meet and connect with while doing my work, whether they be, artists or other managers or promoters or, venue people or stage hands, whoever it is. That sort of, again, comes back to that thread, that sense of community thread that is kind of like what I live for in general, but also I'm fortunate that I can keep it alive and thriving in my work life.
That's awesome. I'm interested to hear, okay, a few different questions. So do you make playlists now, like for music that you're listening to as a soundtrack of your life right now? Do you have a 2021 playlist?
No.
Okay.
No. because I have to do too much of that type of stuff for work.
Right.
So and I'm sort of a bit old school. And I have a really extensive vinyl collection. I still have tons of CDs, even though I can just plug in my phone or whatever in my car. I like product.
Yeah.
So I spread out, like, I bring stacks of CDs. Like if I'm going on a road trip, I know I'm driving from New York to Maine, to do camping or something, and I know where I'm going to stop along the way in the Berkshires or whatever. I'll bring certain music. Like I'm a big, like, Arlo Guthrie, Alice's Restaurant addict.
Nice.
Anyone who's friends with me on Facebook knows that every year I do like an Arlo Guthrie trivia for around Thanksgiving for a whole month. So I'll bring stuff like that, and I'll bring whatever mood I'm in. Like, am I in a dead mood, or I want to hear Aerosmith's first album, or do I want to hear Arcade Fire? Like, what am I in the mood for? And then I kind of have this. I've been doing it so long, I don't really have to think about it. So if I think about one particular recording, it'll give me a feel. Like, I'll see myself on the highway, or I'll see myself in Maine eating lobster, and I'll be like, okay, where will this go to then? What feels like the right next thing? So it's almost like I hit like, okay, I'll start out with this, and this, and I hit a sort of a fork in the road. And if I go this way, I'll bring this, and I'll bring this in case I go this way. And it's a bit of an addiction, but it's really lots of fun.
That's funny you mentioned that. I think through a lot of stuff like that. I'm like, well, if I go over here and I do this, and then I do that, and then I do this, or I could go over here and do this and do that, and then do this, or I could listen to a podcast or listen to this. It's like a pick your own adventure.
Yeah.
Most wonderful. So what is the year that you recommend, or what do you recommend for people who are just getting into the Grateful Dead? Are you like, hey, you should listen to American Beauty all the way through, or do you drop a year, or what do you say?
That's very tricky. That's another, you have to be careful. Some of these are not short, but I'll keep it short.
Okay.
Just for you.
Okay.
So give it to me again. The question is,
if you're recommending the Grateful Dead to someone who I guess hasn't heard them before, or maybe they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of them before, are you recommending, what year do you recommend, or do you recommend like an album or a venue, or what's your way? Because for me, I'm like 1972 Europe tour, anything with Brent, and then with Pigpen and Terrapin Station.
Right. It's not simple. It's never
exactly.
It's never like condensed. So my favorite. So those are two questions. I'm going to answer them. So in two ways.
Okay.
So I think the best. I mean, the Dead in the '60s, everything in the '60s, and again that Europe '72 tour and that record, just unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when the band was their very, 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 very best, and I was fortunate enough to see them then, was in '74 and in '77,
mm-hmm.
in terms of live performances. '77, the shows were longer than most of any shows that they did, except maybe in the early '60s, when they didn't have constraints of where they were performing or when they had to get off stage and
mm-hmm.
that sort of thing. But so I would say my favorite years, if you're gonna go back in time and see the Dead, I'd say, like, go to see them in '74, see them in '77. In terms of recordings, like, somebody's never seen the Dead, and okay, we're not talking about tapes and shows now. That's a whole nother conversation, because I have like thousands of those recordings.
Nice.
Yeah, that'd be a whole nother interview. So, I would say if you're gonna buy a record, I would say, you need to start off with American Beauty,
mm-hmm.
Dead, Live Dead, and Europe '72.
Yep.
I would say those, like, I can't even narrow it down anymore. I could only go more.
Right. That's a good starting basis. Live Dead, '72, American Beauty. That's perfect. For me, I started with, embarrassingly enough, but I will admit it, I started with Skeletons in the Closet, Grateful Dead, Best of the Grateful Dead.
But most people do.
Yeah.
Like I may have started with that actually, only because I think the first song I heard was obviously what was on the radio, and for them it wasn't a lot. Their successes came in different ways. So it was probably Casey Jones. And then I bought Skeletons in the Closet, I think is the first oh no, I had I'm really gonna be sounding old. So I had an 8-track player, and I had Live Dead as a kid at like 12 years old.
Nice.
And I saw my first Dead show when I was 12.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What was the venue?
It was Jerry's birthday, August 1st, 1974, Roosevelt Stadium, Jersey City, New Jersey. Famous show recording. I have an amazing soundboard. They do this incredible Dark Star into El Paso. It's one that you have to own.
I'm going to listen to that tonight. So wonderful.
Yeah.
And it's the venue has the word Rose in it, which is cool. Very cool.
But I think you and I probably first. Oh no, I had that Live Dead thing. Yeah, but other than that, the first piece of vinyl I had by the band was almost definitely Skeletons in the Closet.
Yeah, I like that they start that album with Golden Road, and Golden Road is a song that doesn't get much playtime.
Yeah.
I love the song too. It's so upbeat and really enrapturing.
I love it. They didn't play it for so many years, and I remember when they brought it back.
Yeah.
And within like the last, I don't know, 5-8 years of the band.
Yeah.
As the Grateful Dead, and that was such a treat to hear again.
Most definitely. Hi everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode so far. I wanted to just cue you up for this next moment. It's just a little bit of fun before we lead into a next topic of conversation. Enjoy. Captain Rabbit. Our next question.
Captain Trips.
Captain who?
Captain Trips. That was Jerry's nickname. It's on the first record. In the
Captain
back.
Trips. Definitely feel like
Jerry Captain Trips Garcia, they used to call him.
I love on the back of Jefferson Airplane, it says, what does it say? My favorite record by Jefferson Airplane is Volunteers, and it cracks me up so much. I love all the songs on there, but particularly, I think Frederick is my favorite one on there, or Hey Frederick. I love how on the back of this album it says Jerry Garcia, pedal steel guitar. Where does it say it?
He played pedal steel also on Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young's like Teach Your Children on that track. That's all him.
What am I thinking of? It says like Jerry Garcia, like spiritual advisor on one of the back.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, what album is that? Is this on this? But I
don't know if it's that one or Surrealistic Pillow or one of those, but it does. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, he is a spiritual advisor in a lot of ways for all of us.
Right.
Time traveling Jerry.
They do say that though. They do say that on one of the records.
Yeah.
I remember reading it. I just don't remember which one.
I'm a huge fan of Jefferson Airplane for sure.
Me too. I have actually a really good story if you want to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
It's related to the airplane. Should we record that or were you?
It's recording.
Okay. So through my many adventures in Hawaii, I give workshops there and artists I knew and stuff. I became friends with Darby Slick. And Darby Slick was the writer of the song Somebody to Love. Mm-hmm. Darby Slick's brother was Jerry Slick, and Jerry was married to Grace. Mm-hmm. So they had a band called The Great Society. Mm-hmm. And that band, that's where the first recording of Somebody to Love took place and where Darby wrote it. And then, they broke up and Grace went over to the airplane and she and Jerry got divorced and Darby wasn't in the airplane. Mm-hmm. And Grace made it a hit with the airplane. So fast forward years later, I became friends with Darby. I'm still friends with him. I haven't heard from him in a while.
Yeah.
But he approached me. Put it this way: he had the copy of the original lyrics that he wrote. He type wrote of Somebody to Love, and I was representing him to sell them.
Okay.
I had all these museums and people interested, and I have a copy of it. I don't have the original.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty cool, but I never did sell it. We couldn't come to a meeting of the minds for a price that would satisfy him. So I guess he still owns them, as far as I know. I don't know. I haven't talked to him in a while, but that was pretty cool. That was fun because it was great because to see the interest of various museums that were interested in having the original, and then of course wealthy collectors that just wanted to own it. And
yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I still don't think he sold them, but.
What kind of museums were interested? Like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum?
Not the Hall of Fame, because I don't think they buy things. I think they donate it. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. Because I had a tour of the archives there once, and the guy who was that curator, his Pigpen sister had just found a box of Pigpen stuff in their home attic. She's living in the same house they grew up in.
Wow.
And a car of his, and he showed me all this stuff, and I was able to piece together. There's a bootleg of Pigpen playing this acoustic guitar, it's like 69, 70, and it's all these old blues tunes, and it's a really rough rough recording. And the guitar sounds really shabby. And I'm like, this is the guitar. I remember putting the dates together. Anyway, so I had this experience there, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and he let me hold John Lennon's original lyrics for Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds.
Whoa.
And one other song. Anyway, so I was under the impression that everything was on loan from the estates and the owners or donated. So, so there was a museum I remember, which would have been the perfect placement, and I think was a leading contender. I don't know if it exists, but they were going to build in Monterey, California, a museum, like a Monterey Music Museum, sort of with the main aspect of it being Monterey Pop Festival.
Yeah.
It was like 67 or whatever it was.
68, 67 or 68.
Somewhere in there, yeah. So, anyway.
Love it. That's so cool. I think I've heard about the Pigpen MOs. I've heard a lot of awesome stories about Pigpen throughout the days, just like from other Grateful Dead family members here and there, like stories when Pigpen and Janice used to date and stuff like that too.
Yeah, they were really close, actually. I mean, I have a couple of recordings of. It happened often back then. Janice used to get up and sing "Love Light" with Pigpen.
Wow.
And they lived, because I lived in the town of Corte Madera up the hill, which is just the other side of Mill Valley. When I lived in the Bay Area, Pigpen lived in Corte Madera down the hill in an apartment when he died, and Janice lived in the next town, Larkspur, for years. So they would literally only live like a mile from each other.
Yeah, miss them both for sure.
Yeah, I never got to see either of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel a big spiritual connection actually to both of them too, because they're such spiritual type artists too, that I feel their presence quite a bit different times when I'm listening to the music.
A lot of depth there. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a question for you. What's the best investment you recommend for emerging artists or indie artists?
Investment. It's like, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah.
So in terms of honing your craft, whether it be writing or playing a particular instrument, practice. I would say the next thing would be, when you compose, compose and create only for you and yourself. That which you personally love, that which is an extension of yourself. I would say never create or write for someone else. Be true to yourself, unless you fancy yourself as a songwriter trying to get other artists to record your stuff,
Mm-hmm.
then write for them, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say also never copy any other genres out there with the goal of becoming popular or successful in that genre, as that's just simply not you. That's
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. That's something else. And odds are, whatever you're copying will have passed in popularity by the time you release it to the world. Just like when grunge was big, I remember when Nirvana hit and Pearl Jam hit, and all these artists were then trying to play grunge who were not from Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
and it was kind of like in the record business, for example, grunge is over by the time those bands have peaked. They're looking for the next big thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not doing yourself any justice or service, and you're probably not going to get anywhere with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, it's like always be true to yourself. Build your musical community for sure. Like
Mm-hmm.
start in college if you're going to college. Otherwise, start at your local guitar shop, the guy
Mm-hmm.
behind the counter who's giving lessons, and that's how your career will expand and grow over time through friends and connections. I mean, it's who you know is everything, and your relationships, because
Mm-hmm.
wherever they're going and whatever they're doing, they'll think of you if you're on their radar and you have a relationship with them. I would say lastly, like be open to experimenting with those other artists that influence you, but just don't copy them. Like don't try
Mm-hmm.
to be them, and educate yourself about like all aspects of the industry, as well as the creative process.
Mm-hmm.
Read about it, take classes, go to conferences is always good. Network in any setting where there are musicians like yourself or people that help your career, seminars, and also if you're a composer, try to keep your publishing if at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
And if possible, which is rarely possible, you keep your master recordings.
Yes.
Not so easy.
Yeah. Well, you can hold on to your master recordings for as long as you can hold on to them. And then when those
Yeah.
sweet, sweet deals come about, then it's like, oh, okay, maybe so. Maybe I can let go of the reins just a little bit for this sweet, sweet deal. That's awesome. So it sounds like the best investment for artists that you're talking about is where they invest their time and who they invest their time with and where they go, what they do, and how much they practice.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, I guess it comes back to invest in yourself. You know, um, slow and steady wins the race. You got to get out there. You got to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to
Mm-hmm.
learn. You got to experience, but you've got to pay attention to what your gut's telling you about things. But invest in developing yourself, whatever
Mm-hmm.
you are, whoever you are, whether you're a drummer, a songwriter, a singer-songwriter, a xylophone player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And expect to be in it for the long term. I mean, I've been passionate about music for a long, long time. But in college, I was interning at music festivals. I was putting on events in high school, always at a live music concert, like once a week, twice a week, if possible. But as I started to become a singer, songwriter, artist, musician, like actually putting myself out there, putting the different parts of the puzzle together, I realized it's a long term, it's a career, it's our life goals, it's our life achievements. And sometimes I see artists or they come to me because I do a little bit of consulting too, and they're like, well, okay, and they think it's just going to be this one or two singles or one or two music videos that get them on the map, and it's like, yeah, but this is going to be your career, this is going to be forever. What about your catalog? What about everything along the way that comes with it too? So I'd add on to that, investing our time and then also realizing that this is a long-term ongoing thing forever and ever, and that helps keep the spirits up too with people realizing it's an
Right.
ongoing climb up the mountain.
So it's good to have a side gig that draws income, or if you have to have a full-time job while you're establishing your music career, have one that isn't also consuming,
Mm-hmm.
so that you'll have time for gigs at night, or you have energy to play or rehearse, after your
Mm-hmm.
workday is over, or you can whatever it takes. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, you make a good point about the long haul. So I remember having a conversation years ago with somebody in the industry about an artist that's an overnight success. So, and we were referring to, remember the band, The Police, Sting's
Yeah.
band? So we were referring to like the Police, like they were like an overnight success. They came out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they were like at the time they were the biggest band on radio and one of the biggest touring bands. And somebody pointed out to me, well, they've been playing for 5 years, living out of, and when their first tour of the U.S., they toured in a station wagon, and they had like the first show they had one or two people.
Yeah.
And whoever that one of the ladies who's at that show is like still like, I don't know, runs their fan club or did for something like that. But they busted their ass for
Mhm.
5 years, not making any money, starving, sleeping on the floor of people's fans' houses. And then they, I guess, were lucky to get Roxanne, the single, on radio.
Mhm.
And it really took off, and they wrote a few great records, made a few great
Mhm.
records after that. So yeah. So the saying is 5 years for nothing. So the first 5 years are for nothing, basically. You're lucky if anything happens the first 5 years. If it does, then that's great.
Yeah.
But generally, it's like overnight means first put in 5 years.
Yeah. Overnight is the overnight revealing to everyone else that's watching and all the audience. It's really so many nights, so many days, couple years, lots of lessons, few times crying in the corner, and then they're an overnight success. And then also with being discovered too. I mean, there's so many times that I've been like, oh, I just got discovered. Oh, I've just got discovered. And then on like the fifth or sixth time, I was like, oh, it's an ongoing thing. It's people discovering me. It's getting out there more and more.
Yeah.
The ongoing process. And at least I'm enjoying the ride.
Right. Got to do it for yourself and have fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah. And for the stories and memories too.
Always.
Okay, so do you have anything outside of music that you're passionate about? You talked about at the top of the show that you help adoptees and those in foster care. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So first, I'll just tell you a couple of other interests. So I'm a big film junkie. I just love film. I've always loved film. I've worked in film. I've worn every hat in film, like I have in the music industry. But I just love watching film, all types of film. And I'm a big art buff, painting, sculpting. I mean, all types of art, installation stuff. Travel is a huge part of my life. I need to travel. I'm having a hard time with the pandemic because I'm not getting on a plane right now. But if I don't travel every few months or so, I just get crazy. I have a lot of wanderlust. And I love the way it connects me with the world and other people. Community, which I mentioned earlier, and communication, exchanges with other people from other places and people I'm close to in general. But yeah, I guess if I had to say, like, I pick a cause, it's the adoption world and the work I do in it. So I'm a reunited adoptee. So what that means is, yeah, my parents were high school sweethearts, and they got pregnant at 17, and their parents separated them. And then I was born and with my birth mom for 3 weeks. I was in foster care for 10 months, and then I was adopted. And I feel that one of my goals, one of my purposes in life is to educate people on what that experience is like. So I've done a lot of work on myself around it, but I've also run a lot of groups, and I designed an 8-hour, it's based mostly on expressive arts, healing work and some spiritual stuff. It's called Inside Out, the Expressive Arts Adoption Healing Seminar. And I've taken it around the country, and I kind of don't do it as much as I used to, but I do it when requested to do so. But yeah, so I reunited with my biological family. I know everybody that I was related to, that I'm related to. That was quite some time ago, and I work also as an educator. I sit on panels, I give lectures, I take my seminar around the country. I run a lot of support groups. I'm an adoption life coach. So somebody in the adoption constellation, which would be the adoption constellation consists of adoptees, significant others, biological parents. Those are parents who gave up children in it for adoption, adopted parents, foster parents, therapists. So I work as a coach, guiding them through the choppy waters of an adoption reunion, or deciding to do a search for reunion, or post reunion stuff, which can be quite complex. And I run a monthly support group for anyone in the adoption constellation here in Los Angeles, last Tuesday of every month. And right now it's done via Zoom for the pandemic. And anybody that fits in that adoption constellation, which is any of those people I listed, or a significant other, a husband, a wife, a sister, a brother, of any of those people, can join us. You just need to email me and introduce yourself, and then I will send you a Zoom link. And I'll just give you my email address, and I'll give it again later at the end of the interview. But it's my name with my middle initial and last name at gmail.com. So it's Craig, Craig, S as in Sam, Hyman, Craig S. Hyman at gmail.com. That's the best way always to get a hold of me.
Excellent. Wow.
Thanks for taking an interest in things other than music. It's always nice.
Yeah, of course. That's a really interesting upbringing, to be an adoptee.
Colorful.
Yeah. And then be reunited. I bet there's a lot of different depths of emotions that surrounds that. I mean, family is really important, and the way that we're raised and who we're raised around is so important. That's great that you're helping other people who have also gone through that situation as well.
Yeah, I feel a calling for it, because what happened was, when I was reunited, it was, the whole concept of searching was kind of new, and there was pre-internet. And I would go to all these therapists, and trying to process all that was going on. It was just overwhelming psychologically, and the emotions. And none of them knew what I was talking about. And I was paying them. And it wasn't until, and it was torture for me.
Wow.
I needed somebody to talk to that understood. So a birth mother friend of mine named Myra Ribbon, who's also an extensive author on the subject in New Jersey, she connected me with a lady named BJ Lifton. BJ was the number one authority. She was an adoptee, the number one authority and an author in the country. And BJ became my mentor and was a good friend of mine until just a few days before she died a number of years ago. But I think she's got like 14, 20 books.
Wow.
And that's what saved me. So BJ, she knew everything I was talking about. And then she helped place me with a therapist that got it. So I had somewhere to work all that stuff out,
Yeah.
Very important. Being alone, no good. So I swore that, I made a commitment to myself that anyone ever needed help, I would be there to help them.
Wow. That's really great. And also, you mentioned about it being so particular, being able to find a therapist who can talk about the certain things that you're talking about. I can resonate with that on a different topic. Just some of the stuff spiritually that I've gone through, transformative wise. There's some spiritual development things that I've gone through that are just like, if I talk to anyone about this, they're going to think I'm crazy. So I haven't really found the right, well, besides friends and stuff like that, and some family members, the right therapist to talk to without them being like, oh, and how loud are the voices? Who tells you to write the songs? I'm just kidding. But it's so important that we find people who understand actually where we're coming from, so we can get the real curated help that we need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have a sensitivity and appreciation for that, because it's true.
Well, kids are so important for the world, very much so. So taking care of them is so important from the start.
Yeah, they're our future, right?
Yeah, and they're so impressionable. That's what I've been thinking about a lot this year, is what the kids are going through and how they're looking at all of us and going, y'all are crazy. You guys can't figure this out. Do you have any books and albums to recommend?
Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this, so I made a little bit of a list. So
Awesome.
I'm looking at my notes.
I'll buckle up.
So books, yeah. So there's a book called Deep Blues by Robert Palmer. He's not the artist Robert Palmer. He's passed away, but he was a ethnomusicologist and a professor, I think, in Arkansas, and used to be friends with bands like the Stones and jam with them and stuff. But he wrote a book called Deep Blues.
Mm-hmm.
And to my knowledge, it's the best book about the blues ever written. It also traces back the first time blues music was ever documented as being heard by like an army sergeant or something who was supervising slaves on a gang who worked on a railroad track. Anyway, so some of these are music books, some aren't. So Deep Blues by Robert Palmer. Keith Richards' autobiography, Life, I would definitely get. I would definitely get Dennis McNally's book about the Grateful Dead, A Long Strange Trip, The Inside History of the Grateful Dead. I would definitely get that.
Okay.
In terms of like a music business book, the sort of Bible is a book called, and I believe he keeps revising it, new editions based on the industry, maybe annually. It's called All You Need to Know About the Music Business, Entertainment by entertainment attorney Don Pittman here in LA. And then I'll give you some other books just because I love them and they're not necessarily related to music.
Okay.
So here's a book for all you adoption people out there. It's here's two of this: The Primal Wound by Nancy Verrier and Lost and Found by B.J. Lifton. And there's another fascinating book for the general public called The Highly Sensitive Person by Elaine Aron, which is actually 20% of our population falls under this personality type. And I'm kind of big on spiritual stuff. So you'll see it when you believe it by Wayne Dyer, Be Here Now by Ram Dass, and Living, Loving, and Learning by Leo Biscaglia, who was a school teacher here in LA years ago.
I love that list of books. I have a question for you about highly sensitive. Does that mean people who are sensitive emotionally, spiritually, all of the above?
All the above. So what it is, if you go to the Highly Sensitive Person website, Elaine Aron, the author, she's now written a second book about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 10 questions. If you answer the questions, you get like 8 or 9, you're a highly sensitive person. So she was she was a student, grad student in Santa Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
And she was interviewing people for her thesis or PhD, whatever, and about something else. And she kept noticing these traits. And long story short, she discovered this personality type, which no one had ever discovered before anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the highly sensitive person. And what that means is, not only is it 20% of the population, I'm only talking about this because I happen to be one.
Yeah.
So what it is like, if you're not a highly sensitive person and you give somebody an orange, right, to eat it, they'll say, okay, they say, describe the orange. Well, it's wet, it's kind of sweet, it's got this texture, whatever. If you're a highly sensitive person, you will have like 20 things to say about it. A good example is, I remember when I was a kid, and even now, when I go to a mall, there's like all this stimulation, like all these people and all these different departments and this overhead terrible music, fluorescent lights. And I used to get tired because I used to go lay down in the beds in the bed department, department stores, and they used to kick me out. But so what happens when you're a highly sensitive person is you experience things on like so many different levels.
Yeah.
and it's very taxing to your system, mentally and physically. So, but it's I don't do it justice. The description, I just sort of
Mm-hmm.
touch the surface. Anyone interested should really just look at the website.
I'll check that out. I am definitely a highly sensitive person. When you mentioned, or I guess I'll take the quiz and see. I'm already offended about it. When you mentioned that someone's in a mall and they're picking up on all this different stimulus, it made me realize that to a certain extent, all those different stimuli, a highly sensitive person is going down those pathways. Like they experience it. It's not just the lights, the person, the loud noise and the talking. It's like you overhear a conversation and then you like experience it.
Yeah, I mean, again, you experience things on so many different levels. So you're processing, on all these different levels, many more times than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
So you're more susceptible to stimulate. You can't be overstimulated in a perfect world. You can't be overstimulated, but you can't be understimulated. You want to have a best strike a balance in life.
Mm-hmm.
So many people who take the test, which takes like 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
come to realize that they are highly sensitive person. And again, it makes up 20% of the population.
Mm-hmm.
And she just sort of discovered it by accident. I took her, she gives a workshop. She tours it around the country. And I took it twice, actually, at Omega Institute in New York,
Cool.
where I used to work years ago running the production department. It's like where Ram Dass and Deepak Chopra and Gloria Steinem and all these people go and give these big retreats.
Nice.
I've worked in that world too. That's another story. But yeah, the workshop was unbelievable. So all these people came from all over the country, and at the time it was so cutting edge. And they would conclude by the end of the weekend workshop retreat that, wow, I really can't live in a city anymore. I can't work in a city anymore. I have to change this about my life. This is why I've been sick all the time, or this is why I've been exhausted. So
yes, and like it can be symptomatic of different circumstances and different surroundings, but it's also the agreement that we have with certain surroundings. Because I feel like I've lived in 3 different states. I've lived in Texas, Colorado, and California, and of course I grew up in Texas, so that's always feels like home. But the place that I felt the most at home was Colorado, Denver, Colorado, or Colorado in general. However, that's not the place that I technically want to live, at least right now. So I realized, I'm like, okay, bring the feeling of Colorado into Los Angeles, and to a certain extent be about your surroundings, but also detach and know that you are an individual being and don't have to be exactly attached to the surroundings, and can kind of bring that place.
yeah, you're sort of on the right track. I love Colorado, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I'm wearing a Dead and Company shirt from when they play at Folsom.
You know what? I was dating myself. I was at the 15th anniversary Dead shows at Folsom Field in 1980.
Oh, wow.
That was a wild, wonderful experience.
That stadium is so majestic and so beautiful, with the sunlight bouncing off the mountains right behind the arena. What year was that? You said 1980?
1980. I had flown out, and then I hitchhiked back to the East Coast. I slept in the hills, and then a friend of mine was there for the summer, and I stayed in the commune for a little while. But it was, that's a very special story in my life, Dead related.
Oh my gosh! So
it was awesome. So they cut like the stadium, like half of it, a third of it, and had the audience, and then they had the floor. And remember, John Scher was the promoter from the East Coast. And I remember they opened the second show with Uncle John's band. I'd never seen them open a show with Uncle John's band before. So it was a really incredible time.
Awesome. What was it like hitchhiking across the United States?
Well, I've hitchhiked around the whole United States.
What?
Yeah, so I did 7.5 weeks once when I was still in college.
Uh-huh.
That's a whole nother book. That's like another interview. I mean, times have changed. Things are not the same, and it's a
Yeah.
lot more dangerous than it was. I
Yeah.
did it with my oldest friend in the world at the time, a guy I knew since I was 11 months old. But I would recommend anybody who is in college or once they get out of college before they do anything else, take a trip around the United States. We live in such a remarkable and beautiful and diverse, geographically, culturally, in every way, country that, a lot of people travel abroad, which I also encourage greatly.
Yeah.
That trip that I took changed my whole life and changed my whole outlook on my country. I had never been west of Pennsylvania growing up in New York and New Jersey, and I've never been more north than Maine and more south than Florida. So I hadn't seen the country except the eastern seaboard. And when you go out and you experience your own country and all these different, you're from the same place, but it's like every state is like another country, like Europe. It was such a rich experience that I've since then always encouraged people to do that, like college students and stuff. It was awesome.
That's awesome. Just for my personal reference, what commune did you stay at?
I don't know. I've stayed in a few.
Oh, really? What about the hog farm? That was a commune, right?
Yeah, I knew some of the people there. I never was there.
Okay.
Oh, Wavies. I knew Wavy when I lived in the Bay Area. So I used to volunteer a lot of my time for Seva Foundation. So Seva Foundation was founded by Ram Dass and Dr. Larry Brilliant, who you see on CNN a lot still now about the pandemic. So Larry Brilliant and his wife and Ram Dass and his partner took a trip to India, and they just hiked through India for months, and they discovered that all these children had cataracts. It was causing blindness. And the operation for a cataract removal in India was $5 American. So they came back and they formed Seva Foundation, and it was started and they cured like hundreds of thousands of kids from blindness in India. And then they went on to form, but they did other things with other indigenous cultures, and they're a nonprofit foundation. So every Wavy Gravy is one of the board members, and every year they would do a show with always Bob Weir, Bonnie Raitt, Jackson Brown, members of the Dead, and Wavy would MC it. He'd come out in this clown outfit or dressed up like Santa Claus or something. So Wavy, he founded the hog farm. Yeah. He ran the hog farm. So I've never been to it. I've met Wavy a number of times. A lovely person. And so communes that I stayed on, where there was one in Boulder. So kind of what would happen with me, I took a year and a half off of college, and wherever the tour ended during that time, I would just live until the next tour. So I remember once was in Boulder, Colorado.
Love Boulder.
Once was in Aptos, which is next to Santa Cruz. Okay. That was pretty nice. And there was another one somewhere. I don't know. Oh, the one in Boulder. Yeah. Wait. Yeah, that was two in Boulder.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you'd go on tour and then stay on tour and then pick up and go back on tour. That's the life.
What?
That's the life. And
it was then.
It was then. And then creating your life around music seamlessly while you're experiencing it.
You could say that.
Yeah. It can be a little bit like that. Well, I guess 2020 and the pandemic has changed that. But I know a lot of people that would go on tour with Fish, Sound Tribe, Widespread Panic, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of friends who are fish heads, fish fanatics. I love the band. Some of my best live shows I've ever seen have been Fish shows.
Yeah.
I went to my first Fish show was Lemon Wheel.
Oh, cool.
That was amazing.
Uh-huh.
That was great. Yeah.
That was their festival, Lemon Wheel, right?
Yeah, I was in the northeastern very corner of Maine, just this side of the Canadian border.
Mm-hmm.
An old like Air Force base that was like abandoned, basically wasn't being used any longer.
Is that the tower show where they were on top of the tower?
No, they didn't. There was a Ferris. No, they didn't play on top of the tower.
Okay. Wonderful. So I have two more questions for you. The first question is very awesome.
I wanted to answer the other part of this question.
What's the other part of this question?
You were asking about records.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay?
Tell me your favorite records.
Okay, so I think the initial question you asked me was records I would recommend. So
okay.
I'll read through rather quickly because I know we're limited on time, but it's so these are albums that I just think are important from sort of different. Well, there's a lot left out, but I just from like some of the main areas that I talked about earlier in the interview, rock and roll, world music, blues. So I'm just going to rattle them off if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm writing them down, ones that spark my interest too.
Okay, so Miles Davis, So What, and Bitches Brew. Bitches Brew basically gave birth to a genre. It was a combination of like rock, psychedelic rock, and jazz. Never existed before that record.
Nice.
Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street. The Beatles, Meet the Beatles, White Album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Ali Farka Touré, I would say The Source. And then a record he did with Ry Cooder called Talking Timbuktu. As we mentioned earlier, Grateful Dead, American Beauty, Working Men's Dead, Europe 72, and Live Dead. Carole King, Tapestry. Laura Nyro, anything she's done, including New York Tenderberry. The Who, Quadrophenia, Tommy, and Who's Next. Talking Heads, more songs about buildings and food and fear of music. Led Zeppelin 1, 2, 3, 4, and Houses of the Holy. And I would say Led Zeppelin 3 is the most underrated Led Zeppelin record ever. Humble Pie, Rockin' the Fillmore. Bob Marley, Babylon by Bus, Exodus, and Rastaman, Found Vibration. Elton John, Goodbye Old Brick Road. 17-11-70. That's a live in radio studio recording in New York, and the Hunky Chateau. George Harrison, All Things Must Pass, and the live concert for Bangladesh. Tom Waits, Small Change, Nighthawks at the Diner, Closing Time, and Rain Dogs. Joni Mitchell, Blue, and anything else that she's done.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan, Blonde on Blonde, Blood on the Tracks, the free Bob Dylan, the free Will and Bob Dylan, and pretty much anything else he's done. Ride Cooder, anything he's done. There's a band I love called the Red House Painters that have an alias called Sun Kill Moon that is also a solo artist, Mark Kozolek, who's the band leader. Anything from any of those guys. As for blues, John Lee Hooker, Endless Boogie, Skip James, anything he's done, and in particular the song Cypress Grove Blues. To me, that's the epitome of the blues, and in my opinion, the best blues song ever written. Anything by Robert Johnson, and anything by any of these artists. Howlin' Wolf, Lightning Hopkins, Fred McDowell, Muddy Waters, Son House, B.B. King, Willie Dixon, Elmore James, Little Walter, Big Bill Brunzi, Charlie Patton, who is documented as the first ever blues artist in that book, Deep Blues, to ever exist. Mississippi John Hurt, Bessie Smith, Ma Rainey, Junior Wells, Jimmy Reed. And then lastly, some other world music artists of note that are really important are Tanarwin, Ravi Shankar, Fela, Yoso Ndur, Tomeni Diabate, King Sune Ade, the Balfour Brothers, circa 1932 to 34, Ladysmith, Black Mambazo.
Wonderful.
Sorry, that was a little long, but you have to be careful when you ask me to talk about music. I kind of don't shut up.
That's so great. I knew a lot of the artists that you mentioned. Someone who stuck out is Ry Cooder. I saw him perform at the Paramount Theater in Denver in 2018, and that stuck out as a show that was really nice. It had everyone sitting down in kind of theater seats, and he was really captivating, just wailing on the guitar, and it was so beautiful.
Consider yourself lucky because he never really tours anymore, and he's one of the most important American artists, I think, of our generation. He's still around in LA, and he does, for years he did like the Buena Vista Social Club. That was a band that was huge in Cuba, that the Cuban government wasn't letting them play or anybody know that they were still a band, and he found them and did this record, and they did a Carnegie Hall show and did a film. I think it won an Oscar or something for a documentary. But he's brilliant. Ry Cooder is just, his son is now an artist doing well on his own called Joaquin Cooder.
Nice. Love when there's the family ties stay in there. So I was working as a promoter for AEG Rocky Mountains, and I would get free tickets to shows, and then I hung up this poster of Ry Cooder, and for some reason the way that his name was spelled, because I'm a writer and a poet, so I really like the way that words look next to each other. And so when I saw the name Ry Cooder, I was like, first of all, I was like, wait, I should know who this is. Second of all, I love the name. I got to go see him. And that ended up being one of the most spectacular shows I've seen, and kind of a monumental thing for me because I was going through some other stuff at the time. Okay, cool. Love the blues. I am myself a big fan of a lot of the musicians that you mentioned, Led Zeppelin, of course, Howlin' Wolf. And then for blues, do you ever listen to Bukka White?
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
He should be on that list. There should be a lot more on that list, but I didn't want to overdo it.
Right on. Bukka White is my go-to blues musician, probably my favorite. I like just like the quality of the recordings. They sound super homemade, and the depth and the emotion and the sadness. Yeah,
he's amazing. There's so many artists. Blind, Lemon Jefferson, Tampa Red, all those guys. If you should check out. You ever see the film Paris, Texas?
I've heard of Paris, Texas, like the city.
So Ry Cooder did the soundtrack, and it's pretty much all him on slide guitar, and it's a lot of it's improvised. You should get that record.
Okay.
It's awesome. I mean, he is just the man. The Rolling Stones wanted him to join the band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they actually did a record together. It was just a jam. It was a few members of the Stones, like Bill Wyman, Charlie Watts, Keith Richards, maybe Mick Jagger, and like Nicky Hopkins, who was like a studio musician in London at the time. It's called Jammin' with Edward. It's a really good, loose jam, like if you like that period rock and roll. But Ry Cooder, he didn't want to join.
Oh, he didn't want to join.
No.
He wanted to do his own thing.
Yeah, and it's kind of, thank God he didn't, because he's such a pioneer. Like, so he would do that Buena Vista Social Club, and then he did a record with this killer, man, Cuban guitarist Manuel Galban. And that's just so sassy and sexy and killer guitar work. And he's done, he did this one, what was it called? It was about LA and the history of LA and like Mexican culture in LA. It's just, he's like an American treasure,
Yeah. Wow.
He's solo.
I didn't know that information. That's pretty cool. I'll check out the movie and the soundtrack and whatnot. And also some of the books you mentioned sound really good. I love spiritual books too. And I love autobiography books, because if an artist does something, I want to know how they did it and what the lead up was, because it's like, oh, they made it overnight. That's not the story. There's so much behind that,
Yeah, I mean, I love their story. I love all the tales from the road, because I have so many, and they're all like, trophies to me.
Yeah.
I just love to hear others, especially big artists and that I'm a fan of, and especially artists like rags to riches stories, like artists who were just could barely eat and pay the rent, and just went on and how they build their career. Janis Joplin's book is another one called Janis.
Oh yeah.
Actually, here's two that you should really add to the list. Sorry. So this one, Janis.
Wow.
This book is unbelievable.
Cool.
I think it only just came out about a year ago. I thought I knew everything about her. I knew next to nothing. A lot of it's all in Texas, She's from Port Arthur. And then how she kind of first makes it in a community level in Austin with the guy who owned Threadgills, who's recently either passed away or shut it down. And then I don't know if you're a Springsteen fan, but this book is unbelievable.
I am so excited to read about Janis. I have some new Janis posters I'm going to hang up too.
Yeah, it really pains me that I never got to see her.
Yeah. Well, she was a quick burn. She was quite the burn, quick burn.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, like that, like Hendrix was, she was, Jim Morrison was. I mean, there's so many bands back then. They had like these 3 to 4 or 5 year, at best, careers, and they put out so much stuff.
Yeah.
And they made such a mark. She's
very
one
cool.
of them. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Okay, so tell us about your Jerry Garcia stories. If you would love to, I would love to hear them.
Okay, let's see. Let's call this Encounters with Jerry.
Encounters with Jerry. Pizza Tapes Part 2.
So the first time I met him was just briefly. I was hanging around near the backstage door at the Beacon Theater in 77, which are great shows. So there are Betty boards. So Betty Cantor, who used to be their sound engineer, leaked a couple of tapes out at some point, and I think very few. So there's those Beacon Theater shows, and I forgot what the other one is, but I have them, and there's impeccable soundboards. Anyway, Jerry had gotten out of his limo and was walking in, and there was this girl standing next to me, and he just said to the security guard, he said, "Do you mind if she comes in with me?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And I remember he was carrying a briefcase with a big "Steal Your Face" on it. And I just said, "Hi, Jerry." He said, "Hi." And he just started, I don't remember what he said. He just was chatting with me. He's just very friendly. So, that was the first brush with Jerry, as David Letterman used to say. But the next time I had just moved from California from New York to California. I was there like a week. And I was living in Corte Madera, up the hill. It was called Christmas Tree Hill, which is just the other side of Mill Valley. And I remember I was working in the city that day, and I had like a really bad day, and I just wanted to get home. And I lived up in the hills, so the streets could only accommodate one car at a time. So, and everybody just whipped around these, and you couldn't see around the curves. And it was like a 2-mile drive to my house. So I kept taking these turns, and you'd be face to face with another car. And whoever was coming up the hill, the custom was you had to back down in these little turnoffs and let the other car go by. So I had done that a couple of times, and then I was almost home.
Oh my gosh.
And I took a turn, and I was face to face with this black BMW with black tinted windows. And I remember the time I was playing Blues for Allah and just kind of cranking it in my car. And I was like, you know what? I'm not moving. This guy's going to have to back up or pass me or something. It was kind of a face-off. So basically, he started inching down past me, and our cars were like this far from each other, like 3 inches, 4 inches, and his window was open like this much. And I leaned out because I started feeling like an idiot, like guilty. This guy's like going 2 seconds, like just creeping by. I stick my head out the window. I said, "Thanks very much," and it was Jerry.
Oh my gosh.
And he looked at me and he said, "No problem, man," and he just took off. I came to realize later on, months later, that a couple of houses up, where I was face to face with him, was where David Grisman lives,
Uh-huh.
which was his bluegrass companion for many, many, many years.
Yeah.
David Grisman was my neighbor because I lived just above him, and I didn't even know it. And he was coming from Grisman's house. And it's around that time when they were shooting aspects of that documentary.
Uh-huh.
So that's the second time.
That's an interesting way to meet Jerry.
It was. I felt like such an idiot. And I remember getting home and calling a couple of my best friends back in New York who are deadheads, and I go, "Well, I've officially arrived in California because I ran into Jerry on my block." And they were like, "You're full of shit." And I'm like, "No, man, this is how it happened."
Oh my gosh. And you had a steal your face off moment listening to Jerry's music.
Yeah, I was listening to like the Dead, and I had turned the music down. Like, "I'm really sorry." He's like, "No problem, man." And I was like, "That was Jerry."
So relaxed and so chilled. No problem, man.
No problem, man. It was
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So the last story, the Jerry brushes with Jerry. David Letterman used to have this thing where he did brushes with greatness, where people met celebrities and things, and he'd have them on the show. It was kind of funny. So this is
That's
brushes
cool.
with Jerry. So I was working on an independent feature film in San Francisco, and we had a few days off. And my friend who I was working with, we were in the art department, so like art direction and set dressing. She got a phone call from the film director Wayne Wang.
Mm-hmm.
He did like Joy Luck Club and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
great guy. He lived in San Francisco, and he was operating out of Francis Ford Coppola's Zoetrope Studios, right in North Beach, and where Coppola grew up. And long story short, she and I got hired to work. Wayne Wang had done this film called Smoke, and
Mm-hmm.
Jerry Garcia band did 2 songs for the soundtrack. Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by like the Platters or some 50s like doo-wop group, and I forgot the other song was, maybe an Otis Redding song.
Mm-hmm.
And our job, so it was in a bar in North Beach, just up the block from Zoetrope Studios, called Tosca Cafe, which is somewhat of a celebrity hangout, but now it's recently been purchased and destroyed by some dot-commers.
Mm-hmm.
But we were locked in this bar with Jerry and the Jerry Garcia band and Ashley Judd for one day, and Jerry's bodyguard, manager Steve Parrish, and a couple of Hells Angels,
Yeah.
and a few very small crew. And it was so we did a music video called "Smoke Gets in Your Eyes"
Mm-hmm.
by the Platters, I think, and it's the movie. The song ends the film where the credits run over it. So my job was to, it had to have this ambiance of smoke. So we ran something called an oil cracker, which is a smoke machine.
Mm-hmm.
So smoke up the place, right? And then the rest of the time, I just had to sit and light cigars for Jerry.
Yeah.
For 2 days.
Yeah.
So what I did was I carried around a little Super 8 camera. So I have like 25 minutes of this footage behind the scenes. And the first day was just Jerry solo, right? And he was also with Ashley Judd because she was in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
First day. And I remember when he first came in, I have a lot of things to tell you about that. I'll tell you in person. I can't tell you.
Okay.
Can't be recorded.
Yeah.
But he came in and he had this beautiful blonde like guitar with these F frets, like hollow body.
Uh-huh.
And he was wearing all black, and I said, "Jerry," I said, "I need to take your picture for continuity." And there's no continuity really in music videos. And he goes, "Oh, he was waiting for his guitar. They were restringing it or something." He goes, "Well, I don't have my guitar." I go, "Well, just make like you're holding it."
Mm-hmm.
So he's playing air guitar, and I took his picture, and I have it framed. And I don't think there's any other picture of Jerry playing air guitar that exists.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
had that. And then the next day, the whole band came in. John Kahn, who died just a few months after Jerry, his bass player, and Melvin Seals, who I'm sure you know,
I know Melvin. Yeah.
and the two girls that sang backup, and I forgot the drummer's name, Bill Vitt or something like that. And they kept playing takes of this song, and then at the end, the second half of the day was just Jerry behind the bar, and Ashley Judd would come up to him, and he'd pull out a cigar for her, and then there was just him at the bar, and I had to just keep lighting all these cigars. So that's the picture, of me and him at the bar. That was at the end of the shoot, and I also have all the cigars somewhere. He gave me his
Oh.
mailing address. He said, "Can you send me copies of these pictures?"
Mm-hmm.
Which I did because I took pictures of the whole shoot. And then I remember I got a call from his assistant who gave me a couple of tickets and passes for the Jerry band was playing. Used to play the Fillmore a lot, the Warfield in
Mm-hmm.
San Francisco. So the next day, right after the shoot, I woke up back in Marin County, my town, Corte Madera. I went down the hill to the supermarket, and next to my supermarket, there's a couple of office buildings. I'm getting out of the car, and about 100 yards away, I see Jerry walking, wearing the same clothes. So we made him wear the same clothes for the two shoot days, so he would look the same, so you can edit it better easily. And then there he was, he had like these black sneaker slippers, black pants, black t-shirt. He always wears black t-shirt. And he was just kind of bopping through the parking lot into this office, and they disappeared. But it was what I can say about it was he starts out quite shy, and he just noodled his guitar nonstop. And I heard a lot of different. As a deadhead, I focused on what he was playing while I was working, and he was playing a lot of great stuff that was his music, and Cosmic Charlie and stuff that he never plays, and stuff that wasn't his that I recognized. But he's was highly intelligent, really nice guy, and very funny. So once he gets warmed up to everybody in the room, fortunately it was a small film crew, he wants everybody to laugh and have fun. So he is doing all these funny, goofy things, and just to crack people up, and he was cracking all these jokes. And when this pandemic is done, I'll bring you the video.
I would love to see it.
That I have.
Yeah.
It's only 25 minutes, but it's good.
Yeah.
So
that's so cool. I love the stories. The fact that you literally kept brushing with Jerry. How did you get the gig to help with the music video for the movie?
Right. So I've been working in TV and film as well as the music industry. When I got out of college, I did the one thing that nobody does. I went right into freelance. So all my internships and all my relationships at school with other students and professors were all in the music biz, and we're all in TV film. So I was working in music, freelancing on projects and with artists and stuff and venues. I was a IATSE stagehand for big concerts at Giant Stadium and stuff, just as a side job. And I was also doing TV and film. So we were on hiatus from this feature film that we were doing art direction on. And my friend Laurie had done some stuff with Industrial Light and Magic, George Lucas's Skywalker Ranch and all that. So Wayne Wang had gotten her name, I guess, from George Lucas's people, and called her up. And he says, "I budgeted for 2 people. I need 2 people to art direct this thing, and this is what you need to do." And she just said, "We'll take it." So we had already had the van, we had the oil cracker, we had everything we need. I just had to shop for cigars and candles they wanted on the table. And
what kind of cigars does he smoke?
Well, it's interesting you should ask. He doesn't smoke cigars. He smokes cigarettes, but at the time he stopped smoking. But Steve Parrish, his bodyguard, road manager, became his manager, used to be a Hell's Angel. So he was there overseeing everything, and then he brings 2 Hell's Angels with him, like in case anybody gets out of line. And then he had this driver, Corky, who drove the van. So Jerry's office was like in this van. He'd sit in the van until we were ready for him, making phone calls or doing whatever.
Yeah.
And but when I just bought some good cigars like Macanudos or something because I used to smoke them. I still occasionally. So his parish told me at the end of the shoot, he goes, I can get you really good Cubans. He goes, go to this cigar store in Mill Valley and tell him I sent you, which was right near my house. So I did. And yeah, that was, yeah, but I still have those cigars.
So you didn't know that it was going to be a shoot with Jerry. You were just you got the golden ticket.
Well, first we got the call and got the job. And then we called back to confirm it, and then they told us who it was. They're like, "Look, you can't tell anybody because we have to keep it very on the down low, and it's going to be in this public place, and we only have 2 days to shoot this thing." And they told us, and she wasn't particularly a deadhead, but she knew what I was.
Yeah.
She goes, "You're not going to believe this." I said, "What?" She goes, "It's with Jerry Garcia."
Oh my gosh.
So I was pretty happy about it. And I knew Dennis McNally already, so it was nice. He was there, the publicist. And yeah, but the interesting part that's bittersweet is that was like 3 to 4 months before he died.
Oh.
So last public thing he did, other than that last Dead tour, which I think was cut short, which the last show was at Soldier Field in Chicago, 95, summer 95. So this was like in the spring.
Okay.
This was like in May, something like that. And then those shows in Chicago were like July, August, I think. So yeah, it was pretty weird.
Yeah. Surreal. Really surreal.
For me, yeah.
It's like you had an encounter with Jerry, a visitation from Jerry that a series of moments. I mean, first you're standing there at the door and he's like, female, oh, hello, how are you doing, man? See you later. Next, you're in the car face to face with Jerry and you're like, I'm not backing down.
That was so funny. I felt like such an idiot.
Do you think you would have noticed if you would have said, all right, fine, and you would have backed up a little bit and waited, would you have noticed it was Jerry? Or...
Yeah, because he had his window open enough where I could see his whole head except like this bottom lip down.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he was smoking a joint also. There was smoke out of the car.
Oh my gosh, that's so lovely. And then I love the story. The final coup de grace is just seeing him walk into this office building.
That was the most surreal part because it was like I just spent 2 days locked up in a bar with him for 10, 12 hours. And then the next day the shoot's over and I'm just going to get some groceries. And like, what? Is that Jerry? No, it can't be. Like, what's he doing here? And I realized he was probably, I mean, they all live, like Bob Weir just lived up the block and they all lived in that county.
Yeah. So, okay.
Probably visiting David Grisman again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
That's so great. I'm so fascinated by your entire life story and all the different stuff that you've done in music. I have questions for another time or when we meet in person and you show me those videotapes
that'd be fine. We could do another time at any time you think people would be interested again. Sure.
I would love to hear more about like the spirituality and some of those experiences, just discovering who you are on the road. Because you kept mentioning, you were like, oh, well, that was the time I hitchhiked across the U.S. Oh, well, that was the time I lived on the commune. It's just, it's pretty magical. Because I go through some experiences and I'm just like, am I doing this right? Am I in the right place at the right time? So when I hear people who are literally just living life, enjoying the ride, they know they're at the right place on the right time, I like that. Because it's a reaffirmation to be entirely present in the now and grateful for that moment in order to pick up on what the next indicator is.
Absolutely. And, for me, we go through life and we forget about things or we're just, we're caught up in our daily lives, and for me, to be able to talk about some of these highlights in my career, or even this Jerry stuff, which I don't tell people normally, it's just because I'm not like a groupie of any sort. I've worked with all these people every day, and they're all human.
Yeah.
But a certain few, Jerry, Pete Townsend, who I was fortunate enough to meet, and Tom Waits, who I've never yet met, are three people that I really were important to me to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was very special. But I only share it when it's like the right setting, like this.
Yeah, yeah.
And just remembering some of those. Like, I'm glad you asked me to come up with a short list of some of the work highlights.
Mm-hmm.
They're really dear to my heart, and they're things that I guess I'm really proud of, and I really got a lot of joy from, even though it's all hard work.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think about these things often because
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going through everyday life. So to have the opportunity in this today, thanks to you, to inquire, to have the opportunity to express it and relive it and feel it again is a gift to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. How can we reach out to you? You did mention your email.
Yes.
How else would you like us to keep in contact?
So I wanted to close, just with one thing. So my company is called Numinous Music Presents and Productions, and people always ask me what Numinous means. And I read it in a book years ago, but what it means in condensed is this, quote, having a strong spiritual quality, indicating or suggesting the presence of a divinity, unquote. So that's basically, I chose that for my company name because that's how I see the music and the artists that I work with, as a sort of working on a higher quality, having a higher quality and depth, not religious at all, but perhaps existing in a little bit of a spiritual type of place, but meaning sort of held in a higher existence. So my contact information, and if people are looking for me on the internet, they always say I can only find not much. It's because I always use my middle initial. So if you're looking for me on the internet or anywhere, it's Craig S. Hyman, Hyman. My Gmail is the same thing. It's CraigSHyman@gmail.com. Craig S as in Sam, Hyman @gmail.com. I respond pretty quickly, and I'll respond to anyone. I like to show that courtesy to people. The other thing I would suggest is LinkedIn, which I'm on daily and often. If you send me an invitation to connect, I most likely will. And it's also Craig S. Hyman. So, it's linkedin.com/IN/ whatever. Just look for Craig S. Hyman.
I will link that below in the description, everyone who's tuned in. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on an audio platform, you can check out the caption for this information as well.
I greatly appreciate that. I also have 2 Facebook pages, one for me and one for Numinous Music. So you can find those, and I'm actually on those more than any, like Instagram or Twitter or that stuff. So
very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Craig. It's so cool to get to know you, and I really appreciate all the stories and your experience and all the memories you shared with us today.
The pleasure is mine. You're a great host and interviewer, and I hope that everybody garners some kind of a joy or useful information from my long-winded rants.
We love it. We love it so much. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of the Politics of Kendra. I am Kendra, your Captain Rabbit, and we will see you on the next trip. Peace.